Check on the, are we good on the sound, Ted? Good? Okay. On your tables, we put some lineups, and there's some unique things about this particular lineup that we'll get to. I want to introduce myself a little bit about my background, just to establish some credibility, but make this as interactive as your two previous speakers were. What I found really serendipitous was that Karen talks about teamwork, and we didn't get together and collaborate, but this is all focused on teamwork and baseball as a metaphor to both business and life. For those of you who don't know, I was fortunate enough to have played minor league baseball for 3 years. I made it all the way to single A, and I say that with humility and as transparency of not really feeling like a success having made it to single A. Many people I know out there would trade their right arm or left arm to have the opportunity to have played single A, but when you're a competitor and a sports person, you're looking for the major leagues. You're not looking to make it, nobody aspires to make it to single A in baseball. So it's an interesting dynamic of having fulfilled that dream, but not all the way to the dream. Another side note I can empathize with Lisa, I've given this a similar keynote to the Maryville baseball program about the aspirations of making it to the minor leagues and going through college and so forth. And it was a 45-minute presentation, and I too have a PowerPoint presentation I'm kind of leery of going to because it gets me a little emotional. So, but we'll get through that. But the design of my talk today is to help you figure out what your team looks like, because the number one tie to my success more as a business person than as a baseball player was the team that surrounded me. And in baseball, we have 9 positions, and I want to share with you what those positions represent. When I started my first business post-baseball, it was designed to teach kids baseball camps, clinics, lessons, and I always started the presentation with three goals. Goal number 1 was to be safe. Goal number 2 was to have fun. And goal number 3 was to learn something. And in this presentation, I want those 3 goals applied to here. I want it to be safe. I don't want anybody's feelings hurt, or especially mine. I don't want your guys' feelings hurt. I want to create a safe environment for my presentation. I want it to be fun and interactive. And lastly, if we can learn something. So my goal also in this presentation is any baseball questions for men and women. I find that what makes a really good coach is to be a good student, and maybe not necessarily academic student, but a student of the game helps you coach the game. A student in business helps you be able to coach business. A student of life helps you be a life coach. So it's very important that, and I want to learn from you guys as much as I hope to teach. So everybody, what I found interesting when I was finding a lineup card to share with people, I went with a Little League lineup card as opposed to the Major League one, but there's similarities. There's 9 positions. In this particular lineup card, there's a 6 innings instead of a 9-inning game. But what stuck out to me interestingly in this lineup card was the very top, team. So that's where you put your business name. So go ahead, if you have it, fill out your business name as your team name. It could be your personal name if you're a solopreneur. It could be your business name. And then I found really interesting in this lineup card is the next line on there is opponent. What comes to mind automatically an opponent in business life is competition, right? Baseball makes it real easy. You are playing one team against another team. In a league setting, you're playing 162 games over the course of the year, and you've got a division and World Series and so forth, so they've got other teams, but pick your number 1 opponent, who you're playing against. The date memorializes that we're taking this a game at a time. One of the best advice given to me by I dislike my college coach, but we play in spite of people, and we also play because of them. My particular college coach, one of the things that I did love was he taught us to break the game, this 9-inning game, into every at-bat, every pitch, they all count. And so if you think about, instead of having to win 9 innings, the game, think about how many innings do you have to win. And the irony is in baseball, on a Little League level, if you win 3 of 7 innings, you have a 95% chance of winning that game. So people think I've got to win every inning, I've got to win every pitch, I've got to win everything. Baseball is amazing. Everybody expresses it's a game of failure. They all say if you fail 7 out of times over the course of your career, you're going to make it into the Hall of Fame. That's a pretty nice, and think about in business, if we could fail 7 out of times and we make it into the Hall of Fame, that'd be pretty good odds. So the top part is your inning is scorekeep. Now we're going to go into top right is batting order. And in baseball, we all think of the leadoff hitter. What skills does that leadoff hitter have? They get on base and speed. Those are kind of the two, what we have learned in baseball, get on base and speed. Think of those skills in the business life of who you would like to have as your leadoff hitter. This person could be a lead blocker. This person could be in the call world, the person not afraid to make phone calls in the sales opportunity. So who is your leadoff hitter, okay? That, just like in business where there is operations and there is sales and there's other departments, there is offense and defense in baseball. So we've got our leadoff hitter has, on the offensive side, has these skill sets to get on base and to hopefully score runs. They usually play certain positions. They're fast and sometimes they're smaller, right? So where would they play on the field? Most leadoff hitters are shortstop, middle infielders, outfielders, right? So there's a correlation between what we do on offense and defense. Just like in business, there's a correlation between our sales and our operations and good communication between those two. So usually we're going to put them in the outfield or the middle infield as a leadoff hitter. Our second hitter, or we can go by defensive position, think about, I was a pitcher, think about the skill sets of the pitcher. They're in every single play, right? They are usually considered leaders, but sometimes they don't have leadership skills. So I constantly think about who would be my pitcher on my team of 9, right? So I'm going to go through some people in my life to give you guys ideas of who would fill, and we can take them position by position or batting order. But my wife, not the best picture, she would kill me for that, but my wife is definitely on my team. And I think that as an entrepreneur, people who do not have a supportive spouse are headed in a bad direction when they're pursuing entrepreneurship. I mean, you're in it together through thick and thin. I was very successful as an entrepreneur, and she was a medical resident. So you got one income on one side, and then all of a sudden things don't go well, and her practice takes off, and now it's kind of a role reversal. So it's very interesting, but without a supportive spouse, I hear story after story about financing of entrepreneurship, and I didn't tell my wife this, or I didn't tell my husband this. It is a recipe for disaster, not having that transparency with the spouse. So she is on my team. We'll figure out the positions as we go through. These are my 2 kids, little bit dated pictures, but 11 and 7-year-olds, give you guys just a glimpse into my life. They are, if I would start them, I'd put them on the hot corner or first base, and I would love to groom them to be the pitchers and take my place as the pitcher, both literally and figuratively. They are sports fanatics. One of the things that I wrestle with, as most athletes do, is how the youth sports world is just completely messed up, and we need to fix that. And so you don't know whether to push them and so forth. But they are on my team. Everything that I do is probably for them. My parents wouldn't be here without them, right? But they have been the biggest fans, following in the footsteps. My father is an entrepreneur. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Worked with him, worked for him, worked with him. He would say he worked for me afterwards. I would say I always will model the business. He is the best salesperson that I've ever come across, and modeled an entire sales force after him, and he still works today. My siblings, and they're just representative, they were obviously early in my life, much more part of my team. Now they're in California, both one Northern California, one Southern California. So they're still on my team, but I probably would move them to a different position later in life. Close family, my grandparents. So big believer in legacy. As you notice, my positions are very family oriented, but grandfather in physical education and grandmother's still living, and they are definitely on my team. I took a snapshot of friends. I have, according to Facebook, I have 500 plus friends. I don't think I have that many friends. It's even better on, as those of you know me, LinkedIn. But my friends are on my team. They're definitely in an important position, one of my 9 players. And then my colleagues. I just took a snapshot of LinkedIn to show connections. 3,900 colleagues that are on my team. And you start shifting, some of the colleagues go into the audience, go into the stands, and some are on the field playing with you. And the last one, here's where I'll get a little emotional. My mentor for baseball. So we'll just go to that. So, all right. Mentors are really important, and I think that's one of my whys about what I want to do is be mentorship and teach, and whether kids or colleagues or Medici members. So that in a nut, Nick and I have talked, what is my why? It's really giving back and a common theme of entrepreneurship and so forth. So, shouldn't have gone there, at least. Questions about baseball. I mean, this speech, I've given it several times in many directions. No clue where it's going to take. I encourage when I gave this speech to the Maryville students, someone said the thing that I took out of that speech is that the team changes. It's not, and if you believe in the 10x growth, your team that you start with today is not necessarily the team that's going to get you to 10x growth. You have to figure out who you're going to take with you, who you're going to kick off your team. Some awesome stories of professional baseball, and I'll share with you one of them. I was fortunate enough to play in the Cardinals farm system and played a season, got released, and then played a year of independent ball, loved it, knew that I wanted to play again, so I approached the general manager who had signed me the year before and so forth. I said, I want to get back into it. He goes, you don't want to write a book, do you? I'm like, what are you talking about? I don't want to write a book. No, I do not want to write a book. I would like to play baseball. Because I'm just making sure, because there's kind of like a fraternal thing you don't really tell all back then about what's going on in the clubhouse and baseball and so forth. So no, I don't want to write a book. So okay, I'll give you another chance. So I go to spring training the next season, and in a totally different mindset, much better. The first spring training I went to after that I got released, I had a mindset of I belonged and I didn't know what I was doing and a little bit overconfident. And this other one I was totally prepared for, and I kicked butt in the spring training. And each day goes by, they take this golf cart and they pick people up, and you go see the general manager and you get released. And I was making it past every day. Final day of spring training breaks, the golf cart comes to pick me up. And I go and I sit down in front of the general manager. He goes, Josh, looks like we've been here before. I'm like, yeah, but we shouldn't be here again. But he said, it looks like we've been here before. I said, yeah. He goes, you have a degree from Northwestern. There's other guys here who don't. We're not that worried about you. And I said, what? So I got released because of my academic prowess of going to Northwestern, while there were other guys that didn't have a degree and so forth. It didn't resonate well, but what I learned about the business of baseball is everybody is slotted to be, once they sign you, they say you are going to make it to single A, you are going to make it double A, you are going to make it to triple A, you are going to make it to major leagues. And if you weren't projected, your time comes. And very, 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 very few people overcome. If you're not, quote unquote, drafted in the first 5 rounds, you are not slotted to make it to the major league. So you are called a roster filler. You don't know that. You think that you've got the chance of making it just like everybody else. But the truth is, if you're not in that first 5 rounds, you're just a roster filler, and when your time comes, it's time to go. So they were less worried about me. You know, the Medici debate of everything is neutral. I disagree that everything is neutral. That was bad, right? So that was not a good thing for me. But the spin of the positive is that it led me down an entrepreneurial path that I've enjoyed for the last 18 years. Questions? Did I stop in time for questions?
Yeah, 5 minutes for questions.
Excellent.
Where's Mike?
It's right here.
Les.
So other than the obvious,
Oh.
other than the obvious of winning more games, what are the Cardinals going to have to do to make it into the playoffs this year?
So I will answer this from a player's perspective. I think that the Cardinals fans are amazing. Obviously, the media says this, but the biggest negative that I will give to the Cardinal fans is 3 games go by, Matheny makes a couple mistakes, and they want to hang his head. It makes no sense to me as a player who's played and as a coach who's coached how fair weather our amazing fans are. So I'm not really answering the question, but I'm giving my soapbox version of, like, let's be much more understanding of the profession of what these guys are going through. So that's my soapbox. Any other?
So Josh,
Yes.
so as you mentioned, it's not, I don't know if this is a question or not, but slotted going to the minors or what have you, projected as high, and same thing in hockey. But as far as, so are you amazed when those guys that, or women that don't get drafted, if you will, and are able to kind of far exceed the expectations? Because it happens all the time. Well, not all the time, but it does happen.
I think that just like any profession, I think that athletes, there are some that are born to be entrepreneurs and some that are not. And it amazes me, like this is, we should hire athletes, student athletes and so forth because of their leadership and different things like that. So I'm amazed that we put that stereotype on athletes. For myself, I fought with the stereotype of, do I want to be known as an athlete? Because along with an athlete, now you're a dumb jock, right? There's always a pro and a con to the stereotype of these things. Do I want to be known that I went to Northwestern? Well, amongst my minor league buddies, they didn't think Northwestern was such a good thing. It was kind of like, you're a nerd. So you're always fighting with that, and I'm always, so I challenge the stereotypes of the people because I don't think it's blanket statement of you're an athlete, you should do this, or so forth. So I don't know if that, yep.
So who's the one person you had as a teammate, whatever level it was, that's no longer, let's say, in your life on a daily basis that made the biggest impact on you?
Wow. I would say, and I wasn't very close with this guy, but in terms of an impact, there was a player who played with the Cardinals. He was really, really good. He would go 3 for 3, and after I got released, I later found out that he had perfectionism problems. He would go 3 for 3, and he would be upset because he didn't hit the ball hard enough. And he had this actual perfection issue. And in a game like baseball, where it's a game of failure, so he ended up having a mental breakdown on the sport and didn't make it. So I think impact-wise, that's a good story. So, yes, Derek.
Yeah, the strongest part of that metaphor to me was slated to be something from very early. I spent a lot of time in corporate America, and I made it up the ranks. And what I felt like I found out, is that the glass ceiling is not made of skill, right? It's not a skill barrier, it's a politics barrier. Are you willing to play to get to that VP, that SVP layer? So, yay, that's a cool part of the metaphor, right? So my question is there anything looking back that you could have done? And as people work with larger corporations, we need to be aware of this, right? Is there anything you could have done to see signs of yourself not being that person that's going to go to the majors, correlating back to, are there signs that we can see of a performer that just isn't going to quite make it in this company, and maybe we need to coach them elsewhere to do something else? Does that make sense, my question?
Yeah, and I would take the counter argument. I would say that just as you identified that it's not all about skill, it's about politics, turn politics into a skill. right? Instead of saying, I can't make it because I wasn't born with this or I didn't know this person, get to know this person, right? If it's about politics, then become a politician, if that's what you want. I realized that when I was playing for $600 a month, my college teammates that didn't play professional baseball were making at the time $40,000, $50,000 a year, and I'm like, I'm never going to catch them, right? And so I had to retire from, and I retired because I let the outsiders influence me negatively, in my opinion, that I won't catch them. Little did I know, you can catch up a salary, just become an entrepreneur, right? But little did I know, you can catch those up. So I would say, reverse the thinking that it's not about, it is about skills and it is about a growth mindset. Had I known more about the business of baseball, I would have hopefully worked even harder. I'd still probably may not have made it, but I would have worked even harder.
So there were things that you could have done in hindsight to put yourself on that path.
I lifted weights way later in my career than I should have. I didn't have personal training at all like they have today on the lesson side. I could have, would have, should have done so much more on that side. But I still, who knows? I think we're out of, Bill, go ahead. Sure.
Just one thing, there's one player on here in this position, you have this, in fact, you go to 12.
Yes.
Here. So my question is, where does the field manager fit in?
So,
The guy in the dugout that's got the, charting the pitches.
Yep.
And all that kind of stuff.
so in one of my versions of this speech, I started on the pitching mound, and I don't want to play anymore. I want to manage, right? I want to find my replacement, and as a good entrepreneur, we build businesses, and one of the biggest mistakes we can make is by, in my personal opinion, putting our name in the business. That's great for, right, Cynthia? It's awesome for the ego and the job security and all of the positive things that when we put our names in our business, that is phenomenal. But if we want to sell the business, if we want to be independent of the business, if we want to build terminal value in the business, that's the worst thing that we can do, because we're devaluing it by putting it Josh Levy's Medici, right? So, Bill, that's my answer. Is like, I always put myself on the field and I want to become the manager. Even better than the manager, the owner. Bill DeWitt has better job security than Mike Matheny, right? So, all right. Thank you.